Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today we'll talk about the great hybrid work productivity puzzle. And that has to do with a serious slowdown in productivity. So the Institute for Corporate Productivity, I4CP, a report by them shows that US labor productivity hit a historic low of 1.1% from 2019 to 2023, the worst drop in worker output since 1947. And the thing is, it was rising from 2019 to 2021, and then it went down. This is a serious drop. The problem isn't just in the US. UK and Canada saw their weakest annual growth in productivity since 2013. And the same thing in Australia. So we're seeing low productivity around the globe. What's going on? Well, global productivity is suffering, and there are many theories that can explain it, but the leading theory suggests that it's the top-down forced RTO policies that are the primary cause. Policies that aren't supported by workers, that don't give flexibility and autonomy within a broader context of hybrid work. The policies undermine trust and autonomy, and that is what makes workers less productive. It's not simply the hybrid work itself. It's not simply the return to office itself. It's the undermining of trust and autonomy that are the problems. So let's talk about that. Now, there's a perception gap in productivity. So Microsoft studied hybrid work, and it found that 87% of employees report being productive at work when they're at home, whereas only 15% of leaders were confident that their workers were productive when they were working at home, as opposed to from the office. So clearly, we see that there's a large perception of productivity differences, and leaders report a lot of difficulty trusting their workers to be productive when the workers are working from home. Whether it's full-time remote or hybrid work, just when they're working from home, leaders have difficulty trusting workers to be productive. So as return to policies are enforced, what do employees feel? They feel not trusted, naturally, and indeed the leaders don't trust them. And employees feel resentful about not being trusted. And that causes a backlash against return to office mandates that are top-down, not based on worker buy-in and trust. So when you see these terms of employment around return to office change abruptly, trust really erodes. That's why the rapid return to office mandates have really faced a lot of opposition. For example, consider what happened with Amazon suddenly, very quickly, reversing its flexible policy of teams doing what they want to announce a 3-day in-office policy. That was a very quick, very abrupt shift, and thousands of Amazon workers walked out in protest of this mandated office return policy on the first day when the office return policy was enacted. So let's talk about, that's a specific example, and there are many, many other examples of companies that have not worked out well with their return to office policy. So let's talk about what actually fuels productivity. And the key thing is trust. Trusting workers. Workers trusting each other, trusting employees. This is key. Trust is the invisible fuel of productivity. So this is something that we need to realize. The I4CP report showed a clear correlation between trust and productivity. High-performance firms prioritized both the what of goal achievement and how they're achieved. They cultivate a culture of trust by offering flexibility and considering the needs of their staff. Let's talk about what trust involves. There are 5 key elements here. 5 key elements. 1 is senior leaders trust employees. Managers trust their team members. Managers are trusted by their team members. Employees trust their team members, their fellow team members. And finally, senior leadership team is trusted by employees. And firms saw an 18% productivity rise in these elements post-pandemic. So let's talk about what that means and what the gap is. There is a clear trust gap between high and low performing firms. High performing firms were more likely to agree with the 5 trust statements by a factor of 3 to 11%. So employees there were more likely to agree with these statements. Among low performers, only 2% strongly agreed that senior leaders trust employees, and a mere 3% said employees trust leaders. By contrast, High performers had 11% were more likely to strongly agree that leaders and employees trust each other. So much, much, much more. A huge difference, over an order of magnitude. The absence of trust is a breeding ground for toxicity. So trust boosts productivity, but the absence of trust really undermines productivity and just creates a toxic culture. So the I4CP study reveals that those who describe toxic cultures are 16% more likely to cite lack of trust in senior leaders as a serious issue. And they're 10% more likely to report an unsafe environment for expressing their opinions. What about the healthy organizational culture? What does that involve? That is marked by the presence of strong trust. Indicators include leaders who lead by example, as opposed to just giving orders and not behaving in accordance with their own words. Accountability for employee outcomes, not how employees do things, but really the outcomes. Regular communication of firm values, and immediately addressing what is defined as poor behavior. So you want to align, going back to the office return, you want to align employee needs with the office return. Trust is not a nice to have, it's a must have for organizational success. And the return to office mandate without considering employee needs and getting their buy-in really undermines trust. So the key is to maintain flexibility, foster a culture of trust, and that's what leads productivity to flourish naturally. Now, let's talk a little bit about autonomy. That is crucial for productivity as well. So we have trust and we have autonomy. And autonomy catalyzes productivity for catalyzing trust. If you don't give people autonomy, of course, that is an indication of lack of trust. People will feel mistrusted and they will not like it. So autonomy, we have research, sparks creativity and fosters innovation. So the I4CP report shows that productive firms grant high levels of autonomy to their teams. Autonomy is closely tied to trust. And of course, like we talked about, autonomy helps cultivate trust and influences productivity. In fact, it explains 15% of the variability, difference in productivity, which is a pretty huge amount. Imagine if your firm could be 15% more productive. Autonomy and trust are thus vital for both innovation and productivity. Innovative companies offer both flexibility and autonomy. Teams and individuals are able to choose the right work model for their roles. So teams are able to figure out and collaborate with their individual team members to figure out what works best for each team. Mandating office returns is something that diminishes autonomy and trust, and that hampers organizational progress. So let's compare organizational approaches to autonomy. The I4CP report highlights serious differences in autonomy levels. High-performing organizations offer high levels of autonomy to individuals at 77% and teams at 82%. But lower-performing organizations lag behind. They offer autonomy to individuals at only 58% and teams at only 62%. So clearly much less autonomy offered. So the future of work is going to belong to companies that have high autonomy, trust, and flexibility. The forced office return is really like fitting a square peg into a round hole. It's not going to work out well for you. So strongly rethink your workplace strategy to boost productivity through autonomy, trust, and flexibility, which should be top priorities. Let employees working together as part of a team choose their work environment and get employee buy-in to cultivate trust. You want to give autonomy for team decisions regarding in-office work time and have the teams figure out what works best for each team. All right, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show, and please leave a review. It helps others discover the show, and it helps us improve the show.